And some of these experiences, they seem so confusing. Why do you, why do you think that is? Why not like a straightforward, clear experience versus some of them seem very outrageous?
So just think about your own dreams.
Yeah.
Your own dreams are a jumble of subliminal messaging of your own mind, subliminally messaging your conscious mind in a way, so to speak, unconscious or subconscious and conscious mind, which it's like, it's just innate for these experiences to do that. And from what I've gathered is a lot of the times they're like this because they're not meant to like be like, you must do this and that and that. Usually there's some distortion with a lot of things that are like, you have to do things, or here's this information that you must abide by. That's like manipulative information. And I've noticed that in these experiences with these beings, they're very cautious of that energy of imparting their will, so to speak, upon you. And that is why a lot of these experiences are so just like crazy and playful, because it's not meant to be like, this is who you are, this is your job, go do that. And it's like, no, we're just here to acknowledge you, to help affirm your evolution of your consciousness and whatever is happening in this reality. And you could take whatever you want from this experience that we've added to it, and whatever you've added to the experiences in these zones of like amalgamations of consciousness blurring into each other. And that's a lot of the reason why it's so blurry. So think about your own dreams and how like weird those can be a lot of the time. And now think about that, but merged with other beings' consciousnesses, and that turning into a big jumble of things going on, of consciousness like colliding into itself and creating different branches of like perception and experience that are like groups of that happening. And we see that here again, like we're doing right now, but it's more solid, so to speak, and linear in this perspective, where in that state, it's always more like in flux and quasi-physical.
I would just like to add my own perspective on that. So the more that you expand in consciousness and the higher you go in vibration, which is just a fancy way of saying the more spiritually oriented you become. Basically, what happens is that you become more aware of the fact that you are creating the external reality from within. And the rate in which the internal reality translates to the external becomes more accelerated. It becomes more instantaneous. So in these particular, as we're calling them, hyperdimensional spaces, these spaces where these extraterrestrials and extradimensionals operate from, the rate in which you have a thought and that thought manifests is very quick. So these, as you were saying, why can't these experiences just be solid or clear? They do start to become more comprehensible the more clear you become within your consciousness, because you're no longer subject to thoughts that are just kind of flying from your mind, so to speak. You're clear and you're more focused and you're more deliberate with your thought, and then therefore you can have a clearer experience. So it's with the understanding that all of us share the same space. And this is true with this reality, this is true with all realities, in my experience. We all share the same space, but all of us are actually living within our own subjective parallel version of what we call reality. And so you might look at Shahram and you might see a version of Shahram that I'm not seeing, because you're actually creating a different version of him than I am. So when you're in a space with these beings, I might be perceiving it as they're flying through the wall and all this crazy stuff, which is based off of my own thought accumulation and the generation of my thoughts. But to them, within their own subjective experience, it might not seem that way at all. To them, it actually might seem more solid and comprehensive. So there's a lot of quantum mechanics and multidimensionality that are going within these experiences. And it all comes down to the understanding that when you're in these spaces, when you think a thought, that thought is going to lead you down down a path, we can say. And that path is then going to create what you're experiencing externally from you. So that's why it seems so crazy, because you're generating all these random thoughts without realizing it. But as I said, the more you practice within this reality, practice aligning your thoughts to the reality in which you prefer and the version of yourself in which you prefer. The more you align your thoughts with love, the more that when you're in these particular spaces, you can have a clearer experience, a more comprehensive one. Yeah.
So to add to that, just to simplify it a little bit more, so the refinement of your consciousness as a singularized portion of consciousness, the more you refine that in this dimension, the more refined it becomes in these realities.
Yeah.
So a lot of those I was saying, they're like affirmations that something spiritual or multidimensional is happening, so you could continue with the refinement of your consciousness to where those experiences become more solidified and you become more lucid and aware in whatever extra dimensional contact experiences or astral experiences or just dream time experiences. And again, those are all blurry, but I'm just defining them a little bit more because people will become more aware in each of these planes of experience the more that they refine their lucidity in this reality. Yeah. So
in that dimension, do you experience that the thought process is a lot more clear and focused?
Yes, it goes both ways actually. It's all very paradoxical, as I've mentioned before. You have the potentiality to be far more clear and experience far more spaciousness within those realms, but you also have the potentiality to experience far more multidimensionality of thoughts, where you can think a thought and then simultaneously there's many layers within that one thought. So it's in a sense clearer, but there's also potential for it to be far more, well, either chaotic if you're not focused within yourself, or just vast if you are bringing a focused energy to that idea of multidimensionality. If you're clear and you're focused, you can have one thought, and that one thought can blossom into a whole array of multidimensional experiences.